Hey, welcome to Health Talk. David Chesworth coming here for another episode. And today we're going to talk about the importance of consistency, how to get your mindset consistent and the important role that it plays with your health and weight management role. And I can't think of a better person to bring on board for this than my good friend, Jeff Ford. Jeff is the current wellness director at Palmetto Bluff. He has his own podcast called Behind the Bluff. He gave a really exceptional TED Talk about a year ago now, right?
About a year.
That's crazy, called The Power of Three Steps. And he's got this really awesome life coaching model that I'm going to ask him about today that it relates to this concept of consistency. So, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Excited to be here, and always a pleasure to talk about how to create change.
Absolutely, man. And actually, fun fact, some of you watching might know this already and might remember this, but Jeff and I first met at Hilton Head Health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I drive into this property, I'm like, wow, this is where it all started.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah. Both started our careers here in health and wellness. It's pretty cool. So, all right. So, well, Jeff, I think, one of the most important aspects of weight management, health and wellness is the ability to stay consistent, because it's arguably easier to lose weight, using weight as an example, than it is to stay there or to go to the next level. And one thing that I think is really cool about you is on a personal and professional level. On a personal level, you've done things like an Ironman, which is not easy. You had a chapter where you started a business coaching other Ironman triathletes. You just, every chapter of your life on a personal level, I've seen you just follow through, be consistent, and just have a goal and get after it. But then also, whether it's building a team, those who work with you, or the people that you coach in health and wellness, you help them to achieve these goals too. And I'm just curious, what role does consistency play to you, and what does consistency even mean?
Well, consistency plays everything.
Yeah.
When it comes to living the way you want to live. And let me pause there and just thank you for the incredible introduction and just observation of how I've personally gone after living and professionally gone after developing teams and coaching. And it's interesting when we think about consistency and what it is. We all want it. And yet there's always one aspect of our life where we're failing to be consistent, or we feel like we're failing. And when I think about what consistency is, it's being on more than you're off. And the better way of thinking about it is trying to be imperfectly consistent with the routines that are going to allow you to live your life the way you want to. And then the goals that you set. Everything that we do, we sometimes feel like we have to be perfect. And consistency is not about being perfect. So if we can take a step back and understand that the more consistent we're able to become with the small steps, especially in the very beginning, that will lead to greater outcomes in the future. I've experienced that personally. I've seen that professionally, whether it's been working with individuals on their weight loss or working with endurance athletes. Nothing happens overnight, and we have to be careful with this strive for perfection that is out there.
So I wonder if you could elaborate on that, like this concept of being imperfectly consistent. What's an example of someone who is successfully being imperfectly consistent, and maybe an example of someone you've worked with where they let perfectionism get in the way?
Yeah, so successfully being imperfectly consistent means that when you set a goal, it doesn't go exactly as planned.
Right.
And
it never does.
Never does. And I like to always go back to looking at routines and how they occur on a daily basis and how we adhere to them. The best routines in everybody's lives are not done perfectly consistent. Mm-hmm. So when I think of examples with people from the past, individuals who have gone on to, let's stick on the weight loss side of things, individuals who have gone on to keep the weight off, they never started off with doing 3 hours of cardio a day, one strength training session every single day, and then ate perfectly. Mm-hmm. It always began with an eighth of that, maybe. And I don't have a specific individual I'm thinking of.
Sure. Yeah.
But we have to remember that it always starts in this slow progression that we have to start in this slow progression in order for it to become a consistent habit.
They don't start at the end result lifestyle. They kind of chip away and build up, meet themselves where they are, and have like a realistic next step.
Especially when it's something new.
Yeah.
And whether that is in your finances, your family, your health, anything new, it's going to take you time to figure out how to juggle that ball.
Mm-hmm.
I like to make this analogy that we're all living in a circus.
Yeah.
And we have to participate in the juggling act of that circus.
Yeah.
So don't feel like out of the gates, it is ever the best move to juggle your ball super high. When you juggle that ball way too high at first, you're definitely going to be imperfectly consistent, but imperfectly consistent to the point where you cannot keep up with that routine that you were trying to instill.
Well, even just using like your Ironman track as an example, like you didn't just say I'm going to do an Ironman and you went and did one, right? Like you started with like a 5K or something.
Yeah. So Ironman competition, for viewers who aren't familiar, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and a 26.2 mile run.
Oh, that's it?
That's it. So it's a pretty easy day when you think about it.
It's like a nice warm up, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's a great reference point of if you do jump into an Ironman and you haven't been swimming, you haven't been biking, you haven't been running, you're not going to enjoy the experience.
Right.
And that's another angle to this topic of imperfectly consistent. We have to enjoy the new routines at first in order for them to stick.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So if you, so let me ask you this. If you're trying to start something new that you like, in your mind, you're like, you feel like I have to do this or I should do this or it's the right way to go, but you're like, I really don't enjoy it. What would be kind of like some general strategies, like?
Mm-hmm. And let's just say it's something that we've never done before. And if we have done it before and experienced it, we didn't enjoy it.
Yeah. So maybe let's do this example. You're trying to lose weight. Exercise is an important part of the lifestyle, but I don't enjoy it. I don't like exercise. How do I?
Yeah.
Where would that person start?
Well, the starting point would go right to the model of the power of 3 steps,
which was your TED Talk,
which is a TED Talk that viewers could check out after this conversation today.
Yeah.
And it's really starting with this first step of being present. We can't decide where we're going to go until we understand where we are.
Mm-hmm.
And in the TED Talk, I make the analogy of a storm. We never know when storms are coming up, especially here in South Carolina. They can pop up out of nowhere. And we never know from a life perspective when a family member might get some awful news about their health. We never know when we might lose our job. We never know when we go out for a walk and we might roll our ankle. And when we're in storms or when we're in different seasons of our life, we have to understand what that season looks like in the case of fitness, exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Understand what may be preventing us from being able to exercise the way we want to. What may be preventing us from actually enjoying movement? Because I think a lot of the time when exercise hasn't been something that we enjoy, we are treating it as exercise. And this brings me back to just conversations I've had around redefining fitness. Exercise is a naughty word. It sounds like work. It sounds like it should be uncomfortable. And so specific to this topic, let's ask ourselves a little bit more about movement. Let's sit in this place we are, and let's better understand the variables that are getting in the way of us moving our bodies and also enjoying that movement.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're working 12 hours a day or we're in that caretaker role,
mm-hmm.
and we don't have enough time to exercise, so then we're only sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, let's say, then waking up in the morning and doing a high intensity workout is not going to be very much fun. So that's the first step. Be present with, is there a storm going on in your life? And then
and I really like what you said there about like be present and become aware of why really don't you enjoy exercise? What's getting in the way? Is it because it hurts? Is it because, whatever?
Maybe you haven't found something you enjoy, or maybe you have past relationships. Your relationship growing up in gym class brings some negative connotation to exercise.
Negative memories of gym class.
Maybe you haven't found the right environment, group of people. That's a big thing when you think of movement. Being around people can be a huge benefit for so many folks. And I think many of us feel like we have to go at fitness alone, especially when we're maybe more deconditioned. You've heard this all the time. I've got to get in shape before I go to
before I get in shape.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. That community element can be powerful.
Yeah. And if I may, be present is the same as self-awareness. Sure. That first step is all about getting more aware, taking the words that you shared, and doing an evaluation before you actually set the destination that you're trying to get to. Because once we evaluate where we're at, any storms that are going on, and get that better understanding, then it's about mapping the course forward, moving on to step 2.
Which is
to get direction. So when you go and check out this TED Talk, I use the analogy in this perspective of my dad. We went to Hawaii, and this guy decided to print out MapQuests for...
What year was this?
This was a long time ago. It was it wasn't that long ago where he should have just known that he could have used his phone.
Right.
When he
MapQuest was dated at this time.
MapQuest was dated at this time.
Okay.
Yep. And it's a funny personal story that just highlights the fact that everybody likes direction. Everybody wants to know the step-by-step actions to take in order to get to wherever they're trying to go.
Right.
And if you think about how GPS works, I couldn't even showed up here today because I haven't been here in a long time without putting the road into my phone to bring me from Bluff.
You needed direction.
I actually didn't do that for the record, but
it makes good for the story, right?
It makes good for the story for sure.
But I guess to stick with that analogy, if you've done it enough, you no longer need the direction.
Yeah,
you know where to go.
Yeah, and that's when we know we can be imperfectly consistent. We know we can continue those routines, the new stuff that we're plugging in year after year. And that's the model here is you never stop doing routines that serve you. You actually just fine tune them. You actually go after additions to those routines, which I think is what makes life pretty fun.
And once you get that self-awareness to figure out where you're at, what your issues might be, your challenges, your hurdles, that could inform the type of direction you need.
Yeah. If you don't start with step 1, being present, gaining self-awareness, then you may actually put something incorrect into your GPS. I think a lot of people should on themselves. That's a running joke I have.
They should on them. Should do this. Should do that.
Should do this. I should do that. And when we're going after step 2 and figuring out that destination, what we're going to type into our GPS, it's more about asking yourself, what do you want? And then following that up with, how will your life be different when you are there? Imagining how much better you're going to feel when you're imperfectly consistent with your exercise routine. And we know we can feel that from a physical sense. And more importantly, when it comes to that person that we've kind of highlighted here as our case study for this model, exercise and movement is about feeling better. It's about the energy that it gives you. It's about the mental health benefits more than just the physical. And I believe that when individuals are able to create that connection with movement, they are truly doing movement and they're done exercising. They're doing movement because it makes them feel good more than anything else.
Right. It feels good. And in the context of weight management, it's this stat always, I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Bob talks about it a lot, that exercise in terms of just weight loss as a standalone factor is the weakest driver of weight loss, outside the context of also adding nutrition and all that stuff. But it's the number one predictor of those who maintain their weight loss.
Yeah.
Like those who are active and physically active along the way and achieve their weight goal because they're feeling so much better and they're so good. They've established this habit. They're following through on actions. Their likelihood of maintaining is above anybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great reflection.
Yeah.
It's not that exercise is the driver.
Yeah.
It's what keeps you steering your wheel.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we were present, we've got our self-awareness so that we could get the right direction. What's step 3?
Take action. The most difficult step.
Yeah.
In the TED Talk, I use the analogy of the time that I learned double unders. And David is a great jump roper. David, I'm sure you have a lot of past guest listeners to the podcast. And this guy is just a gymnast, as you know, and good at body awareness. But for many folks, trying to learn how to swing a rope under their feet twice in one jump, it is a very difficult skill to learn. And for myself, it took at least a couple of years to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
And that was to portray the fact that when you take action, it's going to take practice.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you are good at in life and imperfectly consistent with in your life is because you practiced it and because you took action on actually having a plan around your practice. Going back to just you giving me this humble introduction, which
I was just stating facts.
So grateful.
I was just stating facts.
I have always seen that whether it was personal experience for me or individuals being successful in the long term, it's been about the effort and the practice that they put in, but more importantly, the planning of how they were going to go about that practice and that effort.
So they were smart with their actions.
Yeah.
As opposed to just being actionable.
And that's what we can all be very good at, just taking action without sending that action in the right direction. So these steps, not to sugarcoat my model, they have to follow the order that we're describing in order for them to be effective.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it would be kind of like rolling the dice. If you skip a step, you might be in the right direction or you might not.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all done that. We've been in places in our lives where we took action without taking a step back. I've got great examples just about every week where I take action professionally or even personally, and I'm like, man, I should have just paused for a second.
Yeah.
I should have taken a second to think about it before I jumped into that action. So it's like, even in the smallest moments in your life, be present. Okay, I'm slowing down by being present. And then I can get direction with, does this really make sense? Should I really make this decision?
Yeah.
And then you can actually put the pedal to the metal.
So what you mentioned that step 3 is usually the hardest step.
Yeah.
What makes it so hard, do you think?
There's so many factors. There are so many factors. And I even think step 2 can be difficult for a lot of people who have struggled for a long time. And that's where a coach comes in. That's where a therapist, someone who can ask the right questions so that you can find the right answer for you.
Get the right direction.
Get the right direction. And we all need support. So that's important to consider, especially if you've never taken that step before. You've never gone to a therapist or worked with a coach, or come to a place like Hilton Head Health, because I believe that's the purpose of a retreat, for people to get direction.
Yeah,
I really do. And going back to your question about taking action and how that can be difficult, it definitely goes to twofold. Setting up a plan that's manageable given your current state, given the current storm that you may be in. I am not someone who believes that we are on for 3 months and then off for 3 months. We want to create routines that we can do no matter of how our schedules kind of ebb and flow, how our family life changes, finances, all of that. But taking action is where we've got this finicky thing. You've probably experienced lows of this yourself. I know viewers, you've experienced lows of this as well, because I do every single day and in little moments, and it's called motivation.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And so
what is motivation?
What is motivation?
Yeah.
Motivation is like the weather.
Yeah.
It's something that is fleeting and unreliable. I think we believe that we should always be motivated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love this concept of imperfect consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Because people who live the life that they want to live are not perfect all the time, and they don't rely on motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Motivation, to quote Zig Ziglar, it's what gets you started. It's not what takes you to the finish line.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think he also says it's like taking a shower.
Yeah.
It doesn't last, so that's why you do it every day.
Love it. Yeah. And I think it's those moments, especially in the beginning, when you're low on motivation, that you do take action, that you start to prove to yourself that this is how you can live. And people just don't get to that place where they've proven it enough to themselves that it doesn't attach to their identity, not to go on a different direction. But many folks are familiar with James Clear's work, Atomic Habits. And that's what this 3-step model is about. It's very similar. We want to get ourselves, myself included, with the changes that I'm working on, you're working on, anyone's working on, we want to get to a place where these changes become a part of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you start to view yourself as someone who
moves their body.
Yeah.
Someone who saves their money. Someone who puts their family first. Mm-hmm. Someone who's connected with their community.
Right.
You name it, it's all out.
You got to really internalize it.
Yeah, and just like that reference point of the jump rope analogy, you got to practice it.
Yeah.
We're so arrogant. Like, I speaking from experience, you're so arrogant. We're so arrogant when it comes to things that we need to have some patience around.
Right.
I think it's always that when we're struggling, when we are in a storm, and the storm feels like it's crashing down and it's never going to stop, that's when we lose our patience the quickest. And it's in those times that we've got to really slow down with how we set up that action. We got to make sure we remind ourselves that I haven't been doing this for a while. It's not going to happen overnight, but I'm committing to living this way. And here's how I'm going to slowly do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what you said earlier about the actions and the follow through, and the more you do that, the more motivated you get and the more you start to believe in yourself. I think that the power of actions is super great. And I think that, we talk about it. We talk a lot of SMART goals here.
Specific, measurable, actionable.
You got it.
Time.
And I really emphasize when I talk about it, I really emphasize the action part, because, we talk about exactly what you said with motivation. It's not reliable. The common mistake people make with it is they wait for it to inspire them and come to them. And you really got to go toward, you got to court and pursue your motivation.
I like that.
And actions, I think, are actually like the gas fuel for your motivation. Like when you do an action that's in line with your goal on the direction you're trying to go, it just makes you more motivated.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, if you set a goal that's, using the R in SMART, unrealistic, and you don't achieve it, and you don't do the action, I think that's almost more demotivating than even before you started the goal to begin with.
And that's why step 2 is so important.
Yeah.
If you're planning inaccurately to your circumstances.
Or unrealistically. Yeah.
Which I jumped right to inaccurately.
Yeah, because you can go the wrong direction, or you can try to jump too high in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to go off of what you said with just another example here, why the A is so important, the actions.
Yeah.
Think about, we've trained individuals in fitness for a very long time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've noticed this, I'm sure you have, but sometimes when we're teaching someone to squat and they've never squatted before, the best thing to do is to say, hey, do 10 squats. Because not that we're not going to give some direction of like, hey, let's keep the chest up, let's drive the knees out. But what I've always found when coaching people on movement patterns, once you just get them moving, their brain starts to figure it out.
Right. Yes. It helps them to be mindful and present, right?
Yeah, and that's just it's just that awareness piece. I start to learn that this is how a squat should feel. This is how I want to hinge my body to pick something up from the ground.
I've absolutely noticed that. You can't get too detailed with someone who's just starting.
No.
It's going to make it hard. They're going to get more demotivated.
And that's such a good angle that you just shared there, is like, don't get too detailed or over the top with how you do it. Just start doing it.
Right.
And you'll start to sort out.
Feedback a lot.
Yeah, you'll start to sort out, well, I need to do my squat off of a higher box. Maybe I need to put something under my heel in certain cases based off my mobility to make that squat look better so I'm in a better position.
Right.
All applicable to any goal in the dimensions of your life.
So is this like a very linear thing? Like you have to do your 3 steps thing. Like you said, you got to do one before the other, but once you get to action, are you there? You're at action forever now?
Forever, yeah. So in the TED Talk, the 3 steps are guided by the analogy of a staircase as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it because it basically explains why staircases exist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we have staircases built in our homes, built in our facilities, so that we can go up and down them, but not just once, again and again.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we might be taking action in our finances, and we start spending up our emergency fund, just to use a different analogy. We just start spending up the money we've set aside for the storms that occur financially for all of us. It's like, man, got to get new tires, $800, right? Sometimes we start to use money financially when we've set it aside for this, and we start taking action in the wrong way. So we have to go back to get direction. I'm supposed to have this amount of money in my emergency fund. What behaviors can I put in place to make sure that I refill what was the original intention, so I have the security, the financial well-being?
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So you apply it to different scenarios and chapters, and it's a tool in the toolbox.
Tool in the toolbox, for sure.
Speaking of which, what's the 6Fs tool?
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're digging into with branching into the different dimensions of finance. So one of the biggest things in the keynote talk that I present is writing everything out and having a system behind the planning to your imperfect consistency that you achieve over an annual basis. And so the 6 F's actually start in the be present stage of the staircase of change, the power of 3 steps. What we do there first.
What do they stand for?
Yeah, so what they stand for, yep. We'll hit that.
But okay, this is a build-up.
Is we're going to evaluate these first.
Okay.
We're the number. And then we're going to plan them out. So let's go ahead and define them, because I know you're just sitting at your seat. Everyone's excited. David is.
What are these F's?
Yeah. So we've already said 2: fitness, finances. We've got fun. We've got family. We've got faith. And then the 6 should come right off of my...
Was it food?
Not food.
Oh, that's under fitness, yeah.
Yep. Fulfillment. So those are 6. So fulfillment's a recent add. I used to actually teach 5 F's, but I decided that faith and fulfillment are a little bit different.
Okay.
Now, all of these F's mean different things to different people. So you're defining each life domain component of your world in your terms.
As an example, could you share what your 6 F? Are you comfortable sharing?
Okay. Yeah, so let's go through like quick definitions. I have to give you a place of being able to reflect on these yourself. And we'll just start in that order again. So fitness, way more than the physical. It's evaluating mental, emotional, and nutrition routines, all of it. So mental, emotional, physical, and bring in the nutrition, bring in the sleep, bring in all facets of a healthy life.
So when you're planning your fitness in Jeff Ford's world, you're kind of encompassing the 3 pillars. Like H3 would say fitness is like exercise and movement, and nutrition is food. And then we've got the mental, emotional health. You're just putting all of that under fitness.
One bucket.
Okay.
And it's for simplicity, and it's so you don't have too many routines and you don't have too many goals. We'll describe how to kind of go about the planning process.
Okay.
But the very first thing is we're going to just ask ourselves how we feel like we're doing in each of these. I used to call them life accounts. Life accounts, dimensions, components, use whatever phrasing you want. But if we call them life accounts, you're going to be asking yourself, am I depositing into them or am I withdrawing from them? And which of these 6 needs the most attention?
Nice.
So fitness, broad, basically it's Hilton Head Health. It would be the core reason I'm coming to Hilton Head Health is I feel like my fitness life account, it's off.
Gotcha.
And just to give credit where credit is due, I know we've got 5 more F's.
Yeah.
The author who uses this term, life accounts, his name is Michael Hyatt, and he wrote a book called Living Forward. It's not well known. Absolutely loved it because many of the principles and how I go about coaching folks through this process, through this model, stems just from his teaching in that book.
Very cool. So you use his definition of fitness.
He doesn't define these 6 F's.
As a life account.
Are very central to the Power 3 Steps model.
Yeah.
But his concept of life accounts and this concept, which I'd love to share, of a drift versus I use the analogy of putting deposits into one versus withdrawals. Michael Hyatt's work highlights the fact that we're always going to be drifting in one of these. Our goal is to stop that drift before we drive ourselves off the road.
As soon as you said drift, I thought of like hydroplaning and drifting it.
That doesn't feel good.
No
one likes to hydroplane.
No.
So we've done fitness.
Okay.
You ready for financial?
Yeah. What's your definition?
Financial is saving and spending. We can keep it really simple. Like Hilton Head Health is for the fitness account, we could use the example of Dave Ramsey. They specialize in financial coaching.
Financial wellness. Yeah.
Financial wellness. So that's a good example that I think can help relate to listeners. But financial well-being is also in some relation to your job. How we like to help folks classify it, though, fulfillment is probably going to be more aligned with your job. But there's overlap in all 6 of these. Right? I think that can be what's difficult when individuals go after trying to plan, is that you have to recognize that all of them are overlapping. And that's what's good about getting them all in a sheet is you can see where something in your financial, like a goal or a routine in your financial account may help in your fulfillment account. Because if we're after a professional career move, for instance, well, you're going to have to consider the financial factor to that professional career move, where most people may be moving on to a different position for work. A lot of the time these days, it's not about money. It's about them feeling more fulfilled with what they get to do every day.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Number 3, family. These are not in any order. If we did put them in order, family would probably be at the front. At least in my context.
If you're watching.
Yeah. Lindsay, Mia. Family is, I like to think about this account in regards to how much time you spend in the right relationships and how much time you're spending in the relationships that aren't serving you.
That drain you.
Yeah, the old test of time is we are the sum of the 5 people closest to us. And we can sometimes outgrow relationships, but we never fire those individuals from our life. And it's not that you have to fire people who aren't supporting your growth and where you want to go, but it's evaluating, are you spending enough time in the relationships that matter, the relationships that are going to be lasting? I use the example of we invited 200 people to our wedding. And I think many people have had this similar experience. You invite 500 people to your wedding, a lot of people to your wedding.
Yeah.
How many people do you actually talk to and connect with on a regular basis after your wedding?
Right.
If you're not married, you can use a different way of looking at
Yes.
this. However,
But you're right, though. When
it's
you're
not as
planning a
many as
wedding,
you think. You
Right.
go into it, I'm going to be friends with these folks forever. Yeah, we're going to call each other up every day.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen. So the family life account, it's all about evaluating how much time are you spending in the right relationships, and are you connecting with those people deeply? Are you spending time with them undistracted? We haven't even gone into the technology piece today at all in regards to like health and the impact on being able to take action.
Yeah.
But that would be what I would consider an obstacle sometimes to all 6 of these F's. How are we using technology?
Mhm.
But that was family.
Okay, family.
Ready for number 4?
Yeah.
I think we said fun. So fun. This one is so overlapping with all 6. If your relationships aren't being tended to, life isn't very much fun. If you're very physically unfit, eating foods that don't support your energy levels, life isn't very much fun.
At least not if you're eating them regularly.
Yes.
It can be very fun sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes back to being imperfectly consistent.
Sure.
Fun is where I think you rope your friends into it, but I would even, and when I teach this, and this is like a 90-minute workshop, if we're really going to take our time and go through each
one,
you can do it in an hour or so to get kind of how to do it. But literally, in my days of leading the Power of 3 steps every single week, it would be it would be 60 minutes. You could get it down, but you needed the 30 minutes after to kind of dig deeper and to get it rolling. But with fun, friends fall into fun, but they can also fall into family. We have many people in our lives, and I would even consider David family, not just friends.
Likewise.
Yeah.
By your definition, for sure.
And that's because we spend a lot of time together.
Yep.
And
a positive relationship.
We're like-minded, positive relationship. You got it. So all of you listening today, I bet you can think of 2 or 3 friends that you have that you would put into your family account. When it comes to fun with friends, when you have a family, it can be more difficult to plan fun. So the fun account is all about, what are your vacations going to look like for the year? What are you going to do with your friends? How can you create some regular routines with your friends and not just with your family? I know a lot of parents out there in general, or even grandparents, you may be spending more time just with your immediate family because of needs and stuff, and you might not be spending as much time with your friends. Those people are important to you.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that fun is just, it's like downtime, it's positive, it's not productive in like the work sense, but it's productive in that you're just enjoying your time?
Yeah. And that's a great pause, because downtime's needed too.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about this here today, it could feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I got to plan 6 different life accounts. And if I don't, I won't achieve my goal.
Right. And I got to take 3 steps with all of that. There's 18 things I got to.
Yeah. Yeah. And this makes more sense when we do a live like workshop in general with it.
Yeah.
Because you can personalize it more. You can pause a bit and take the actions right then and there. However, what you want to be careful about is not planning downtime into your life, not planning hobbies.
Would you put that in the fun account?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, like watching TV, sports games. When we're videotaping this today, college football is very big. So it's things like that you are fun to plan in. Maybe you have some friends over, or maybe you just want to watch those football games by yourself. So I do think that needs to be a part of it. Most people are pretty good at naturally creating that. This message is, this pause that you've instilled is just like, know that that's still fun and needs to be part of the plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's fun.
We got faith and fulfillment.
All right. Ooh, we saved heavy ones for last.
I know. We saved the heavy ones for last. Faith can be the most personal, because not everyone necessarily has a church community. Faith is asking yourself the question on a regular basis, am I focused on something that's larger than myself? So as a Christian, as a believer of God, God is like your second friend. He's the person you talk to. He's with you all the way, with
Right.
you being specific.
That's what your faith is.
My definition of it. So it doesn't have to be yours. Our family gets a lot of community through our faith. We get a lot of connection through it. And that's where faith is about. Do you feel connected with that larger good, that larger purpose with why you're here? I may personally believe that, God put me on the planet for a reason. It could just be, think about the whole phrase, everything happens for a reason. Like it's weird. And I think everyone, regardless of their denomination, can agree that
Has something like that in their
something
life.
like that is going on, right?
Yeah.
So keep that in your terms, but this is going to be, what's that routine that allows you to focus on what faith means for you? And then what goals do you have with that? From a pure, even nonprofit perspective, that could be your faith account. You could be heavily involved in the purpose of helping dog shelters, or we've got a local charity that our Thanksgiving turkey trot just supported, local to this area, Memory Matters. And their mission is all about helping caretakers of those who have Alzheimer's and dementia-related diseases. So it's getting involved in something that's bigger than yourself and regularly being involved in that.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. People who are generous are happier and generous with your time more so than even your money.
Mm. Time is money sometimes.
It is money. Yeah.
So how would that be different than that last example you gave of like the charity?
Mm-hmm.
Different than fulfillment?
Overlapping again.
Uh-huh.
I know there's a lot of people out there who know they get a ton of fulfillment from their faith.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a ton of people out there who get lots of fulfillment from their fitness.
Or their family.
Or when they have fun.
Yeah.
So it's weird how they all connect, honestly. And as I've talked about...
So what makes that fulfillment pillar unique then?
Unique.
Yeah. Why have it?
Yeah, why have it? It's so that you're taking action on what fills your cup. And it's so different than just the faith account, because people who feel fulfilled, they have all 5 of those moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
You can't feel like you're really depositing into fulfillment if you haven't tended to the other 5. I shared earlier that I used to teach it as the 5 F's. And the reason I taught it that way is because...
So is fulfillment the sum of all 5? Is that what I just heard you say?
With how we're teaching it today, yes. And I'm a guy who likes to change things. I like to evolve them.
Yeah.
We were just talking about this.
Did we just evolve your model in real time? Is that what just happened?
All the time. And that's why I love it so much, because not only does the model mean different things to different people,
Uh-huh.
and you at home can contextualize it in how you want to, which I think it makes it more inviting that way. But it evolves to the point where fulfillment is kind of that end goal, as you just described it there. Is if we want that 6th life account really working for us, we want that one dialed in, you're not going to have that one juggled at that high level unless you pay attention and evaluate and plan the other 5.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, is there an account that you're working on more than another one right now?
As a chronic overachiever, I'm always working on all of that.
Are you a perfectionist too? Do you struggle with that?
I definitely struggle with that personally and professionally.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to note here. Anytime wellness coaches, folks who are in helping professions, a lot of the time we're in these professions because there's something in it for us.
Mm-hmm.
What we teach is because we're working on it ourselves.
Yeah.
And I hope that comes off very authentic. I know that comes off in your program as very authentic with the care of your team and how they treat new people every week.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I know this place and I know the sense of the environment that you guys create. In for me personally, to help the perfectionism, and this is to put a bow on how to go about, writing this out and actually taking action from this conversation today. Have restraint with how much you program out. So I think when we set goals, oftentimes it's like, how many should I set? 5, 6, 10, however many. In each of these life accounts, you always want to have just one goal and one routine. So I know we're using a lot of numbers here, but every year, the only thing you're going to do differently is set a new goal. So you're only going to set 6 goals per year. Okay. And that's even a lot. And the reason I encourage people to set 6 is because if you hit 4 of them, you're crushing it. Even if you hit 2 of them, you're better off than you were the year before.
You recommend a diversified approach.
Diversify it. To your point, what are you working on the most? That should be your priority. Prioritize the ones that are most important. We're not going to, continue to use this phrase imperfectly consistent, but it makes complete sense in this example as well. Is you've got to know that some of these are going to get to that place by the end of the year, and by the next year, you may pivot them. You might change them up a little bit. I think it's always warranted for someone to say, I'm just going to set 3 goals, and then I'm going to have my 6 routines that I do in those buckets of my life, the life accounts. But you have to have restraint with how much you do. And I'm speaking from the fact of perfectionism. I will personally, and we see this with other folks, set too many goals, so it gets confusing. Yeah. And that's where we don't want you to be after talking about this today. This is where we probably need to go on into this on an individual level, and figure out what's right for you. For me, faith has been a priority over the last year, but fulfillment is actually kind of the next stage for me personally right now.
Very cool.
Really dialing that in, focusing on it, and trying to go further with some of these concepts.
Nice. Well, Jeff, this has been awesome. I could talk to you for obviously a lot longer, but we are getting close to the end of the time for our podcast. But do you have any final words of wisdom as it relates to consistency, the 6 F's, words of wisdom to leave the listeners with today?
Be present, get direction, take action. It's that simple.
Boom. Summed up into 6 words. Right there. So, well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today. And listeners back home, thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you got a lot out of this, working with my good friend here, Jeff Ford, Wellness Director at Palmetto Bluff. And as always, this podcast is for you. So let us know. What else would you like to hear us talk about on this show? Who else would you like to hear us interview? And what challenges are you facing? How can we help you overcome them? Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you at the next episode.